Okay, I think we'll start here. Thank you everyone who's joining here. My name is Ulf Andreasson. I work as a systems or solution engineer in EMEA for Sumo Logic. And today I'm going to talk to you about continuous observability or also AWS observability, effectively observability using Sumo Logic. So I'm hoping that's going to be worthwhile for you and listen in. And as I'm here on myself, please post any questions or so in the Q&A or chat window, and I'll definitely try to cover those off. And if nothing else, we'll have some Q&A in the end of the session as well. So with that said, just kind of making sure that everyone is on the same page. So what I kind of wanted to share with you is that, which I hope most of you already know, but Sumo Logic is a cloud-native SaaS service providing you a platform to really handle all your kind of, intelligence about what happens within your IT environment. This means that we collect and store and also help you analyze any kind of machine data. So effectively metrics, logs, events, and also traces. The beauty with this is that we have a platform that really provides you with the capability of being able to kind of look at all that data, kind of pivot between logs and traces or metrics and logs, or whichever way you want to do this. And it's a fully self-service hosted platform. So, we need to get the data into Sumo, and there's a number of different ways we use different sort of technologies. And effectively, short answer to that question or short sort of section of that is really that data needs to be pushed into Sumo. We collect it using REST APIs and similar things, but basically getting the data into Sumo. Then we can support a number of different sort of use cases, whether those are operational, security, or business-like use cases. From your perspective, you can share all this data and you can have everyone within your organization to be able to connect into Sumo and actually draw some insights from that. So it really is about sort of making data available and being able to look at that from depending on your role within the company. And that, it really is a very sort of easy and efficient way to be able to draw a lot of insights of what's happening here. And this is what I'm going to try to show you today during the webinar or deminar or whatever you want to call it. Right. So one of the things that we see as well is that the adoption of cloud services are increasing. In this specific kind of slide you have here, we talk about AWS services. And as we all know, AWS has a lot of different cloud services or data services that they provide. The most simplistic one is probably EC2, where you get your virtual machines and things like that. But, anything from kind of database services to all the supporting services around what's being used there. And what we can see, so we have something called the Continuous Intelligence Report that we, on a yearly basis, produce and kind of share. This is basically analyzing the usage of different cloud services that we see within Sumo. And so there's a lot of good insights here. Some of these insights we're actually feeding back into our solution. So when you use Sumo Logic, you can actually have some of those insights and benchmark you against, and it gives you a good sort of understanding about where you are compared to many others in the same industry. But one of the things that we've taken out of this report is that the median number of used services within AWS accounts is typically 26. And this is increasing. Just a year back, or maybe it was 2 years back, most customers were using something like 15 services. So this is increasing. And of course, the adoption of kind of different kind of services depends on what you're doing, right? But this kind of shows the complexity as well as the multitude of different services you as an IT person need to look at and be able to observe and kind of track and make sure that things are running smoothly, right? So there's a lot of things in there. What we do from a Sumo perspective is that we have a very simple way of collecting this, and simple in your terms, in the way of that we would, we would have a simple way to set up the collection using AWS quick starts, or effectively CloudFormation templates, which can be stacked as well. So you have one sort of CloudFormation template that basically uses multitude of others. And then we would collect all the data from the different accounts that you want us to collect from the different regions you want us to collect from, and all the different data services and various kind of entities in there. This is all sort of automated within one CloudFormation template. And it still gives you the flexibility of, if you're already collecting some of that data into an S3 bucket, we can just use that instead. So it's very simple to get going. Once you get the data in Sumo, not only do we handle everything that needs to happen on the AWS side, we also make sure that all this data is enriched. So every log line, every metric has all this enrichment to it. We also make sure that all the data streams and sort of collection data sets are coming into Sumo and being labeled in the right way. And then we have what we call the Explorer, and I'll come into that in the demo. But this basically means that you will have a lot of information pre-built and pre-set up for you. So once you've kind of deployed the AWS observability solution, you will effectively have a complete view of what happens within your infrastructure in AWS, or your different data services being used in AWS. And this is really kind of something that many customers of ours have really liked. The multitude of information they get in there in a very simple way, and the power that they have all this in one single place, and all the different data sources and all these things, that really is kind of something that stands out. So let's go into a demo. So when you come into Sumo, what we'll effectively do is to open up the Explorer. And there's a multitude of tools you can use here, depending on what data sources we're looking at. But we just can open up the Explorer and kind of get going there. So in this Explorer, which kind of resembles a bit of the Windows Explorer, if I put it that way, on the left-hand side here, you get the different sort of accounts. And within those accounts, and as I said previously, you can decide which accounts you're going to collect, and you can also name them. In this case, I've named them dev, prod, and stage, because that's effectively what I'm using them for. But when I open up these different accounts, I can see the different regions I'm being deployed in. And the beauty with this is, on the right-hand side here, I got my overview of my AWS account. But the more, depending on what I click on the left-hand side, it's going to drive the dashboard and the information being shown on the right-hand side. So this just gives me a very kind of simple overview, and it basically takes me through much of the information that are being collected, EC2, Lambdas, RDSs, or whatever it may be. Oops, sorry. So it just takes me through all of these different data sources and kind of show me what could be of interest here. Now, let's kind of take a simple example. I want to understand more about my EC2 instances. That's kind of what, most people have some EC2 instances. You want to understand more about what's happening there from that perspective. You probably have a lot of those, as I have here. But what I'm going to show you here is very quickly the kind of utilization of CPU and memory here in this honeycomb dashboard. That kind of, I can easily kind of see the spark line here, what's happening, depending on the different metrics or the different data we're looking at. And I can see an average CPU utilization and all sorts of different sort of metrics here in this way. As you can see here as well, I can actually see things that are time shifted. So in this case, it's very much a lot of different instances, but I can also look at this from different time perspectives. Now, let's kind of take one of these examples here. So we're going to look at the memory utilization of some of these systems, and I can just select one of these and we can kind of see here. Now, if I want to see more about this instance specifically, I could go into different logs or I could just look at the error logs or something like that. I'm not sure if there are any errors here, but maybe what I also can do is I can go to some recommended dashboards that could be of value to me to look at. A very easy way is to also go to the instance ID, or maybe the whole region or the account, but going to the instance here, it's just going to show me a it's basically a shortcut. Instead of trying to find the instance name here, which is not always that easy, I can now very quickly pivot in straight into that instance. Now we're looking at the CPU utilization for this specific instance, the number of bytes being sent or received, and the inbound connections, and all the kind of metrics you can dream of in this kind of view here. But there's more to it than this. I can go in and select maybe some specifics here with regard to memory, for example. I can see exactly what's happening on this system based on the memory aspects. Or it may be I'm interested more in the kind of network side or the CPU or whatever it may be, right? So there's a multitude of different things I can look at very easily to get to it, using just pivot around from different sort of entities to different data sources or whatever it may be. Now, that's one thing, but an EC2 is kind of something that everyone has. But let's look at something that more and more customers are starting to use, and that's Lambdas. Lambdas and serverless, more of that is kind of something that our customers is starting using, and we see this in general, right? So Lambdas has its own kind of challenges and complexities in that way. So here is an overview of my Lambdas that I'm using within my organization. And I can see sort of the caller locations here on a map, and I can easily drill into this to kind of see more details about where these caller locations are. And as you can see, the deeper into the map I get, the more kind of details I'm getting. So we don't necessarily show all the details immediately, but you can just drill into it. I can also see the top sort of services using the different Lambdas, or the IAM users there that are sort of invocating these things, or that are using these Lambdas. So it gives me a very simple overview here of that. Invocations, as I said previously, today versus yesterday. So I can just kind of, if I remove maybe yesterday, which is this green one, I can kind of compare today versus last week, or whatever way you want to do this. And this is easy to kind of change when you go into the search here, and I can sort of slice it and dice it to my best, sort of to my liking, so to speak. Duration of the Lambdas, or error messages, or number of errors here within my Lambdas, or even throttling and things like that. Yeah, I can also see things like, the top functions based on duration. So this could be kind of something that, we all know that the number of invocations is something that we're paying for with Lambdas. So I can easily go in and see those kind of things here, right? Successes and failures is another one. Right now we're seeing something, or for the last 24 hours, as you can see up here, we see roughly about 8,000 messages that relates to errors. And when I drill into this a bit more, or just looking at this, to be honest, I see that one very big sort of problem I seem to have is a database authentication error, where I get invalid credentials to my get billing info here. And, I can see with regards to successful versus failed requests, if I remove the successes here, I can see that basically my get billing info here, which is the highest bar on this chart, is actually kind of a complete failure. It fails every time. And I can see the kind of different operations here, when things are happening and so on. So maybe I want to drill into this a bit further, which we can then do. And looking at this, I see effectively this is the kind of what I saw before. But what I can do here more easily to actually go into the finer granular details here, I have a multitude of information here, but here's like 5,600 log lines. Obviously, what I'm interested in is the kind of the get function, an update function configuration here. This is kind of something that I am a bit suspicious around. And what I then can do is just go in here and look at that specific sort of update function configuration here to see if I can draw any insights of what's been happening here. And in this case, sorry, I'm not getting what I expected to, but I would be able to see the user here who's basically done an update to this, and can I identify that update, and then also see the user in question there, and then be able to go back to him and kind of talk to him about what update he did and why the kind of if the invalid credentials are being used there, or why I'm catching that problem, and effectively be able to highlight that and go and change that so that we're not seeing this problem anymore. So that's one way of kind of dealing with this. And, you know, going from a very high level sort of dashboard where I can see what's happening all the way down to the details. Sadly, I didn't get all the details that I wanted to here, but it's a demo system, and you know, I guess that's kind of one of the issues here. But this is kind of data that's live that we're looking at, and you know, this is kind of things that I should be able to see. Now, that was looking at it from a Lambda perspective, but I also want to show you something different. And that's that we have something called the root cause analyzer that really going to help me look at events of interest or things that could be of interest. Now, when I, you know, as a storyline here, what I have here is that I'm being told that we have some issues during kind of after midnight earlier yesterday, right? And I had some issues, my applications didn't perform well. And typically what I would go and do is to look at my ELBs or application load balancer to begin with. If I'm only going to select to look at the last 12 hours, not minutes, but I can easily kind of just change the complete view of this, you know, and what I see here is that I got a spike of errors in my load balancer here, 500s. I get a spike here, and this is kind of around midnight, right? So it probably is around 2 o'clock. And this kind of is an interesting indicator that something has happened here during that time frame, right? So what I now can do is that if I go into my events of interest, this is going to highlight sort of different events that are drifting away. And this way I can kind of see here. So first of all, here I got sort of a timeline on the kind of, you know, on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, I got the drift away from what effectively would be normal. So let me open this up in the full Root Cause Explorer. And Root Cause Explorer is also something that you can get to from here, right? So you have that available here, as well as one of the kind of tabs that you can open up. But this just basically shows me interesting events that could have happened or that I should probably focus on. And I can open up the window here even further. You know, I can drill into this. I can look at this. I can also kind of be very specific about what I'm looking at. So in this case, I am sort of filtering this on the prod account. I am filtering this because this comes with context of where I started looking at this. I am looking at the different regions and the namespaces here, which are effectively ELB apps and ELB target groups. What I can do here is that let's kind of look at everything instead of just looking at ELBs, because my problem may indicate or may be somewhere else, but just in the ELB. So I can easily kind of say that, okay, let's clear this and let's look at everything. And you did see that I got a lot more information here now. Still the same sort of type of information. And if I look at this around this time from here, I see that I have had a couple of issues here. Now, the way we categorize this is that we look at different things. You know, early indicators are typically load or throughput. So this is something that typically happens early. Then after some time, you probably start to see things like errors, availability, and latency issues. This is just a categorization, and this is coming from the golden signals from Google and the kind of SRE book that they wrote about, and the way they've kind of looked at it. So we just want to kind of label information here that makes sense. Now, as you can see here on this slide, or on this kind of view, there's a lot of information here. So what I can do to kind of hone in on this a bit more is to just kind of be more specific with regards to what time frame. And here I am about sort of midnight, or slightly after midnight. I can show this in different ways, but basically it's still the same information. So when I start to look at this, I can see that I had a DynamoDB bottleneck. This is kind of a throttle event that's happening here, and that happened for about 20 minutes, and it drifted almost 1000%. So obviously something is kind of spiking up here quite dramatically. I can see that looking at this kind of time shifted metrics, which basically is the same metric, but 1 day ago, or as in this case, 1 week ago. This is kind of a very good indicator, because I can see there are some fluctuations here, but not as much as this one. And as typically happens, right, you start to see sort of some kind of throughput issue, or some drift of some sort, right? This could instigate some other issues here as well. And here we see actually some load average. So the CPU on some of these servers, because this is actually looking at the CPU load average, but what this is, it is a sort of joint grouped event from multiple of these kind of these. So I can go in here and I can look at specific of these ones. So this again just shows me that it wasn't just one event, it was actually multiple. Going back to the event of interest here, you can see that there's actually a multitude of these, and they've all been grouped together. This is really kind of showing you the strength of Sumo in the way that not only do we identify different things, but we can correlate those and really kind of show you what's worthwhile to look at. So of course, this is kind of something that's, raising a bit of cause here. Now, after some time, we also see that that basically, we got some we get some product searches here that, and effectively latency in the EC2 instances. So there's a multitude of issues here. And we also seen some ELB apps here, ELB app errors, I mean, that is again kind of something that stands out, right? So there's a lot of good information we have here. Now, what I can do here though, is that given that this happened first, I want to investigate this further. So what I can do here is that I want to go in to look at what could possibly be the cause of this kind of bottleneck. And given that we're talking about DynamoDB, I want to go in to look at the events of what's happened here with that. And that way I can kind of see different events taking place in DynamoDB. Now, the beauty with this is that I selected a specific sort of event that happened here that has drifted away. Now, when I come into the ELB of when I come into the DynamoDB events here, I actually have all that context with me. So we're looking at the specific namespace, the table name, and even the specific time frame here. So what I want to specifically look at is to go down here and see the all table events, because I suspect that something's happened here that could be of interest. And when I go into, again, I go into a search of this to really get the details. Now, what I can see here is, again, sort of some update tables, some delete tables, and things like that. So again, going into the details of this and coming down to the beginning of this, I can see that basically a user here, Ankit Goel, he went in and he changed the read capacity units to 2. Now, in this case, we detected this, so this is kind of a bit like replaying what happened, but in this case we detected this, and Frank was smart enough to go in and kind of increase this to 5 again. So the problem you saw there for a short time frame, we identified that problem. We saw that this wasn't really a failure as such, it was more a configuration issue. And we could then easily go in and kind of change this back. So this happened about 5 minutes after the first event there. And that really kind of, helped us clarify that problem. So again, these are 2 examples of what we could do and how we use kind of AWS observability to kind of look at, to look at your estate there. Now, this is not just, but this is kind of showing you what's happening within your kind of overview and your kind of environment as such. But to that extent, there's a multitude of more things that we can do in here, right? Sorry, it's just not responding to me. We've been looking at the things that comes out of the box. So looking at the account overview or events of interest and things like that. But if you're interested in more of the kind of operational overview, maybe some you get some services or some applications running within this environment, we can satisfy that too. DevSecOps views, we got all the kind of views for you, right? This is kind of something that you can build yourself, or this is something that we can kind of take and bring together, depending on what you're looking at. So there's a multitude of different things we can create here. And of course, we want to make sure that we kind of build in as much information as possible. It could be your kind of CI/CD tools, your commits, we got some other applications and solutions for that. So something called the software delivery optimization solution. And, there's a multitude of those things that can be built in and that we can kind of draw some value from. But this is basically what I wanted to show you today. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have and just post that in the Q&A window. While we're waiting for that, I just kind of briefly wanted to say as well that, if you go to Sumo Logic, first of all, you can start a free trial here very easily, and you will get full functionality for 30 days. You can also go into this kind of what's new section here, where you can effectively see where we update Sumo continuously, more kind of features are coming to it, more applications and integrations are constantly being added to it. And, we just trying to kind of make Sumo as clever and as useful as possible. We just added this kind of cloud-to-cloud integration framework that basically uses REST APIs to go and collect data for you. So there's a multiple of different things that we're adding to it here, right? And that's kind of something that could be useful to look at as well from time to time. One question I have here is that AWS Observability is obviously for AWS. Is there any other kind of, can we look at other environments? And that is true. Or actually, let me rephrase that. We're working on expanding observability also into Kubernetes environments. So you will be able to sort of look at the Kubernetes environment and kind of draw insight from there. That's sort of imminently going to be released. So give us a few more days or weeks here, and you're going to start to be able to kind of use the same type of observability and root cause analyzer to be able to use with Kubernetes environments. Another question is with regards to cost or licensing of Sumo. Sumo is really all about sort of you pay for the ingest of data coming into Sumo. That's effectively what you're paying for. And there's a credit model here so that you are not sort of penalized by any kind of fluctuation in your ingest and anything like that. You can, you buy a pool of credits, and those are going to be consumed depending on if you ingest traces, metrics, or logs, or whatever it may be. As I said as well, is that another question here is about self-service. Sumo is all about self-service. So you can go in and you can change the retention of any specific data set. You can change the retention, and actually one other thing with regards to the cost of Sumo is that you can use different data tiers. So for example, the most simplistic and simple one is archiving. So if you're not really gonna, or if you aren't really sure you're going to use Sumo to kind of search through the data, you can just push it into archive, which means that it's effectively free to push through Sumo. You're going to put it into your S3 bucket, and that doesn't cost you anything at all. Now, if you want to search through the data, you can just select what time frame or what data set you want to search through, and you re-ingest it into Sumo in a very simple way, and then you can search through it. There's also other data tiers there that kind of something called frequent and infrequent, and that would sort of allow you to search through the data, and in some cases you search through the data and you only pay for the amount of search you do, or effectively the amount of scan data you go through, or so you don't kind of pay for any ingest of data and anything like that. So there's a couple of different things there, and I would recommend you to make contact with any of us in Sumo, and we can kind of take you through all the details there. But basically, the long story short, you pay for the ingest of data, and you then have the flexibility of kind of storing that data in different data tiers. Any other questions? I'm happy to take anything you may be wondering. Okay. In that case, I'm just going to thank you for kind of joining this webinar today. And I'm happy to kind of, if there's any questions, and sorry, I should show you the last slide. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to me directly, you can just send me an email to ulf@sumologic.com, or as I said, make contact with any of my colleagues here, and we would be happy to help you. So thanks a lot for today, and hope to see you start using Sumo.